Hey guys, thanks for joining the boost. Today we're at Geekdom. We're going to be talking about some startup week, nearshoring, and some of the other exciting things that we've got coming. My name's Leon.
I'm Pablo.
Amazing. Where do we want to start? Or where do you want to start?
I mean, Geekdom Startup Week. That's gonna be a big deal.
It's October
14th to 17th, I believe.
14th through 18th, I believe.
18th. Okay.
Monday through Friday.
Oh, it's a full week.
Yes, it's the full week,
Okay.
and we'll be there. You've got to talk about
do.
nearshoring.
I do have a talk about nearshoring and the over 20 years of experience that I've been doing it. So kind of long time.
And it's evolved a lot.
It has evolved a lot, and now it seems that there's a lot of more activity around nearshoring. So it's pretty exciting. I'm actually glad to be able to speak to an audience and not just a client about it. Like now it's actually like, okay, people are using this to actually grow their businesses.
Yes, and I think the conversations that we've had is more businesses are picking up outsourcing, and one of the considerations, especially in a Texas market like this, is Spanish is a big plus, and then time zones. I think so. We do a lot of hiring in the Philippines. We've got a ton of staff there, but I think nearshoring has becoming the term. But you want to explain the difference, like nearshore or offshore, overseas, like
It's just about proximity related to time zones mostly. People think it's just about the proximity of the country, which it is, but it's about time zones. So really the biggest issue is that when you're hiring from Europe, you're hiring from the Philippines or Asia in general, it adds a lot of stress to the process of production because, look, I mean, working with the team in the Philippines, you roughly have what, a 3 to 5 year window with any resource that you're working with. Because I mean, think about it. If you had to get up every single day, and work from, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. as an example, would that be conducive to you over the long haul?
No.
If you have a family, if you're, obviously there's a lot of stressors that just simply getting around daily life and working those kinds of hours, it's very, very hard. So that means that for every one resource that you have during, those types of hours, you're going to have to bring in a second resource to kind of, offset the stress on that one person.
So you got sickness too, and that's a really big one.
Yeah.
Working at nights, you end up getting sick a lot, then you take off. So you do have to have two people at all times. And then, to your point, 5 years probably the time horizon before they either start asking for daytime hours.
Right.
And if you can build out a team well enough, you could do some people all day, some people at night, and have a 24-hour operation. But it's something that's hard because you have to manage them.
Right.
And if you don't have somebody that can be there in person, it's a really difficult thing to let somebody and trust somebody to work completely opposite hours, leave you notes, and try to like interpret things or get QA, because then you either have to hand it to somebody else or you end up doing it yourself, which adds a stressor and then builds resentment towards that employee where you're just like, I'm not a fan of this person because he always leaves me stuff to finish.
Right. And I mean, look, the default and what everyone talks about, especially in more recent years, is, just go to Fiverr. It's easy, right? Fiverr may be a solid solution for one project, maybe two projects, but you have to remember that you are effectively filling time for that resource. If someone else is willing to come in and fill more time, they're going to tell you to kick rocks, because they're getting paid more and for a longer period of time. And look, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not training that resource, they come with all of the, skill sets that they developed before you came along.
And bad habits.
And bad habits, that's right. And then if you're trying to get them to work in a very specific way, in a very targeted fashion, if you have a culture of efficiency and everything has to be done like by the letter, and you have a large, a stack of SOPs, standard operating procedures, and you expect that resource to follow those, good luck.
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially if you just hand them a document and say, hey, here's the process, without going through it. And there is always a level of training for everybody. Just like if you start a new job today, your first week's training.
Sure.
Same thing with an overseas resource. It might be a little bit longer because you're giving them a lot more control, or you're making sure that they follow a specific process.
Right.
But you have to make sure that's set out. And I think, so what I'm trying to say is a lot of people don't have those SOPs built out.
No.
So they're telling somebody for the first time to do something and then build on top of it. You know, like a lot of what we do is, I love to do this. I record a Loom, myself doing it, hopefully well enough that somebody can follow along. They make a document, and that becomes it. They also trust that you can do it, and then you've got a process every time after, and it's efficient and easy then. But that first, you know, it's the 90-day window for any employee, any contractor. That first 3 months, are they adding value? Probably not. And to your point, if it's just a project and you're going to do, you know, build me a website, it's an easy thing to do one time, one off.
Right.
But if you want to do, say, hey, I want you to run our social media, I want you to become our email support, I want you to, you know, deal with our leads, manage our CRM, like any of those things where they become executive assistants or something in the manner of they're
Process
doing,
managers.
yes, process managers. And I think a lot of what every business owner should do is get out of the weeds and give that off. Like, you know, business owner doesn't have to answer every single phone call. They could, you know, outsource that. I've seen full on like self-storage spots have a screen. You walk in, the person's in the Philippines, that, you know, they check in, they do all that stuff. Maybe there's somebody there real, but a lot of times everything's automated.
So virtual, yeah.
And you can save so much money comparative to an American employee there. Yeah, there might be some benefits to it, but you're going to save thousands of dollars over the course of the year.
But one thing that I've always said, and I know you've heard me say this a million times, and that is, like, if you're going to save money, then you have to make sure to understand that you will invest that in time, right? That doesn't mean that it's just like, oh, okay, this is just going to be simple. I'm going to save money and I've just won the lottery. It doesn't work that way. You know, you're going to have to build out the process. I mean, we've built out our own teams, right? I mean, our own teams are built out in Asia, Latin America, and obviously here domestically in the States. But if you don't build out those teams, you're going to expect an efficiency, right? And that's something that, you know, takes a while to get over. And if you have clients, you know, and you're trying to make sure that you're doing things by the book with those clients, you don't want to make yourself look bad. You don't want the clients to get upset with you. You know, if you're not doing those things, that's another thing you can expect, is that you might lose a client, you know, or more than one client, you know.
Or a lot of customers, bad reviews. There's a lot of risk.
There is a lot of risk, that's right.
And it's no different than any other employee, but there is just the cultural differences. There is a little bit more pressure because you have that fear of not being correct, or looking, you know, being embarrassed of like, this is the work that you did, because sometimes a lot, especially if you're a service-based person, you might be portraying it as yourself. Like,
that's right.
Or the person's going to think it was your fault no matter what. So
it bubbles up to the top for sure.
So, you know, we've built the teams, we've done it over, we've got a partner that's in country. I think that's also an important part, is our partner is in these countries building. He was in the Philippines for the better part of 3 years building teams out. He's now in Latin America building teams out and understanding the culture. I think that's an important part. Having a partner that tells you, you know, hey, this is very common in Latin cultures. This is very common in a, you know, a Southeast Asian culture. Because if you don't understand like why they're saying yes, sir, or, you know, like they address you in a formal manner, you might, you know, think it's fine, or you might be okay with it, but there's also a, you know, a hierarchy system. They might not want to bring things to you because they're like, oh, you're the big boss, I can't bring problems. So same thing in Latin America. There's, you know, there's holidays. Like, you have to have somebody that helps you navigate that. Because I think if we try to do it, you know, initially right out of the gate, like if we had no experience and had to start over, we would struggle with that, because that's what people struggle with on Fiverr. Oh, hey, you know, we hired somebody in Pakistan. Oh my gosh, there's like a holiday every week in some capacity, you know, like it's no different than the United States, but there is a lot of holidays, and they don't align with our holidays. So it's a conversation of, you know, what is going on? How do you manage this person? And you have to do it, you know, like, it's no different than the United States.
Yeah.
If somebody working in New York is a very different person that's working in St. Louis, that's working in San Francisco.
Or San Antonio.
Or San Antonio, and they're all different styles. Like, New York has a fast pace, like a lot of the environment is very.
I don't care about your feelings.
Yeah.
Just turn it over.
San Francisco, you had a culture that was more or less like beer and fun, but you were expected to work, 12, 14 hours a day because you were in that office.
Right.
In the Midwest, like it might be a different thing. There's more family, especially in San Antonio. It's more family oriented.
Yeah.
So you have to contend with those things. Same thing internationally.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned culture, and the one thing that has saved me countless times is just the fact that I'm multilingual, and raised speaking Spanish and then working with people that are Spanish speaking. I'm not trying to say my Spanish is like perfect. Yeah. There's technical terms that I forget all the time. I have to learn new terms, but I can communicate to at least make myself be understood. And what I've noted is that the other parts of the culture is also just the flow of how work is expected, right? So if I say to you, hey, I'm going to turn something over on, I don't know, I'll have it to you by Monday. In my mind, in Latin America, I'm going to have the whole day Monday to work on it to turn it in by the end of the day. In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to get it 8 a.m. on Monday.
Yeah, first thing, right. Exactly. the doors open, right. And the same thing in the Philippines. Like if you say that, you leave a very big margin of error. Like what is their Monday also, Yeah. And that's why I think a really valuable part is Latin America, you have that same time zone.
That's right.
So when you say it's Monday, there's no confusion if it's their Monday, our Monday, like what time. It's, hey, it's Monday, and then the nuance is, hey, I need this by Monday by 2 p.m. And it has to be QA'd and good to go, not just
ready to deliver.
Yeah, not just hey, here's it, can you give us some feedback? I think being very explicit, and this is just like a managerial thing in overall, being explicit in your instructions. This needs to be delivered this day at this time with this expectation of it will be done in this way.
Right, and the thing is these rules are also not just for startups. These are rules that apply to Fortune 500 companies. A funny story, when I first started doing this in my career, I worked with Citigroup. I was living in Milan, Italy. So I was working with Italians that were speaking English, right? So it wasn't even their first language. Okay. We were using development resources that were Indian, okay?
That's a big time difference there.
And then, my senior managers were in the US. Yeah. So when we had to communicate all as one team, we were all, for the most part, speaking English as a second language, but the leaders were English as a first language. So you want to talk about, not only that, but the delays on phone calls. I mean, this is now 20 some odd years ago. Yeah. So there was really, really long latency on phone calls. So when you're trying to talk to somebody, make a point, talking over each other, it was a comedy. And of course, I'm, sitting in Milan, Italy, like in the middle of it all, very different from being just in the US working internationally with resources, being international, from the U.S. and seeing the kind of the relationship between all of these different continents working on a project together, made me really appreciate this as like an actual career, and that's something that most people just think, oh yeah, like I said earlier, just hire it out and it'll be fine. No. The other thing too is, look, infrastructure, like we take our internet for granted, right? We get power outages every once in a blue moon, related to,
pretty steady.
Electric surges because of everyone using air conditioning in the summertime, that could happen, or storms or things like that. But our power comes back relatively quickly, in Southeast Asia, for example, when they have a typhoon, their power could be out for days.
And not only that, they have brownouts or, in American terms, blackouts. Yeah. And they're consistent. They're like, hey, between this hour and this hour, they're doing upgrades and this is happening. Same thing in Colombia. There's points where, hey, between the hours of 6 and midnight, there's not going to be any power. While, a lot of Latin countries have fiber, their fiber's still a little iffy because they have one line in or there's one spot that's like at the junction and, car crash, somebody messing with it. So you have that. And I think Latin America is much more stable. They're close to the equator. You have less storms. You don't really have typhoons. You don't really have hurricanes too much. There's, landslides, mudslides, like normal storms. But overall, I feel like there's a better consistency because in the Philippines, you have typhoons, you have earthquakes, you have fires, you have everything, and you just never know. Like, right. Typhoon season, but if you're not paying attention to what's happening in the news over there, you might not know until like, hey, my person didn't show up today.
Why?
Yeah,
exactly.
And then you got to hunt it down because they don't have service. So if you have multiple people, it's easy. Like when when our partner is Ruskin, when I ask them, sometimes it's like, oh, hey, I'm gonna have to text this person. They're in Baguio, which is in the mountains, and then in Manila, they're like, oh, hey, they're getting hit with a typhoon now. Like the power's out, storm's out. They can't run generators all night. So I think there's a lot of risk in that. Granted, I do think that their English is a little bit better, and they have a lot more infrastructure because infrastructure in the terms of jobs. Like they do a lot of the call centers, they do a lot of that. So they have a little bit of a unfair like advantage, but Latin America is becoming more and more popular, and as more companies move in, it's also going to make it easier for companies to turn around and say, hey, we do want to hire a social media person, a designer, a developer, maybe an executive assistant, a process manager, somebody, and you have them on the same hours. There's a lot more benefit to Latin America that I've really found useful. Like people who get sick, you can, in my case, like my Spanish is like navigational in grocery stores, but occasionally somebody tells me like, what's the word for like something. I'm like, well, what's it in Spanish? And it's like healthcare or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I understand it's healthcare. And they go, yes. So it's a little bit easier because in Southeast Asia, you have hundreds of languages. You don't know if they speak Tagalog, or there's all this other stuff. Some of them speak Spanish, some of them speak English. It's very disjointed because of the islands.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. And the topography of those islands. I mean, you mentioned fires earlier. Why would a fire cause a problem? Well, if a fire on an island causes lots of problems because you can't breathe.
Yeah, right? And then the internet comes into one junction, the power comes into one junction. All of a sudden, that becomes a problem. It was just like I believe Venezuela. Man, maybe a few years back, maybe close to a decade back. Remember when their internet got cut, the fiber, because it was like a fire that burned through the lines?
I don't remember that one, but
yeah. So it was like it cut off a large portion. It's just like in Europe, there's like undersea lines. Like you can cut off America. It's just easier, or sorry, harder. In these countries, might be easier. So
they just don't have the extended infrastructure. But in general, I mean, look, we've brought up a lot of things that do explain some of the difficulties of building out teams, to be able to do work internationally. It's not to say that it's impossible. It just means that you have to, again, put in the time. We've benefited for quite a long time, working internationally. I mean, I have not worked in digital without international support ever. And I think even if it's light support or your whole operation is based on it, either way, you still have to build out the infrastructure internally and have the SOPs and develop all of those things, to be able to do it. So, certainly.
The last thing I'll say too is your story, it's big company. Everybody thinks that, oh, I have to be a Fortune 500, I have to have hundreds of employees before I'm outsourcing. That's not true. You could be a small business that's a dog walker, and you have somebody man your chat while you're out walking the dogs, or you have somebody help you on the books that's that knows how to do the bookkeeping and the reconciliation, or you have somebody do the scheduling. There's so many opportunities for SMBs, and I really stress the S in it, that they can outsource. They just need a partner that helps them.
Right.
And it sounds hard, but if you have that right partner to help you navigate it, you can talk about the currencies, you can talk about the risks, you can talk about why they might not show up or what happens or what holidays, and they'll give you that guidance.
That's right, exactly. So kind of a sneak peek of what we'll be talking about, during the Geekdom Startup Week talk, but we'll cover a lot of these topics as well. It'll be the 15th, which I believe is Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday.
Let's see, the 14th, 15th. No, it's Tuesday. You're right.
Okay, so Tuesday, we'll put it on the podcast. We'll have it as a video and a clip, and then we're doing a special episode of the Boost. We haven't solidified it just yet, but maybe some really cool stuff out in the street, and then also a sit down panel with some folks that are talking how to start a business. What's the impact of community, and how do you leverage these communities and these tools and these processes to actually build a successful business.
That's right. And I think in the end, the resources are out there. The question it comes down to is, how do you adopt the resources, and what ways do you adopt the resources and implement them into your business? I think just talking about nearshoring is the same exact thing, right? Yeah. It's people have done it, people do it, but everyone thinks, or a lot of people think that it's just because other people have done it, that it somehow gets easier. No. It's not. These are independently learned lessons. But if you take those independently learned lessons that others have put down and leverage them, and then build out your process accordingly, you avoid a lot of the headaches.
Yeah, it's just like hiring a tax person. Like, right. They're going to be able to explain every single little nook and cranny of rules. Same thing on a hiring perspective. Right. Like, you can go to recruiters just like you'd go to Indeed, and they'll help you navigate all of those like small nuances.
Exactly. So really, it was a short show today, but hopefully we'll get you to come out to Geekdom Startup Week, which was again October 14th through the 18th. I'll have my talk on the 15th of October, which is a Tuesday. We'll cover nearshoring, and then we're going to also do a Boost episode as well
on Wednesday, I believe. Okay. And it's invest in, and I will put the details below. I think it's the Intercontinental Hotel.
It is at the Intercontinental. That's
yes.
Right. So we're looking forward to that for sure. And, come out and check us out, and we'd love to see you there.
Bye.